Talk about the DOM and how that relates to JavaScript. So JavaScript was created to help support HTML. And HTML documents can be thought of like a tree, where there's the overall document, there's the high-level HTML tag, there are head and body elements, and then there are one or many tags that might be contained within those. Generally speaking, the structure is consistent for things here in pink, purple, and blue. Everything else after that, though, in this tree structure of an HTML page can be dynamic. You can have as many or as few things as you want in an HTML page. The magic of JavaScript is that it allows you to interact with any of these elements on the page, either the expected ones or even finding, discovering, and changing elements or HTML tags that are dynamic, that maybe you didn't expect to be there. Although if you designed a page yourself, you should be expecting to find things there that you put there. Let's go ahead and demonstrate now how JavaScript can help you interact with these tags on the page now. All right, so first let's go ahead and create an HTML page. I'll call it DOM. If I can type, .html. All right, I'll do an exclamation point and then hit return. And let me put in some basic information right now. So I'll do a header and say H1, I am the title. So this is going to be some basic boring stuff. And then I'm going to do a paragraph and I'm going to say I am the first paragraph. And let's drop in a couple more. Copy, paste, paste. And this one will be the second. And this one will be the third. Okay, so JavaScript could theoretically and in practice see all of the tags in here and interact with them as needed. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. And first I'm going to do this correctly. I'm going to put a little script tag here at the bottom and I'll say script. And I'm going to use the following. JavaScript document.getElementById .innerHTML. Now I want to set this header tag equal to something. In order for me to be able to do that, I need to give it a unique identifier that JavaScript can talk to. So there is an attribute that you can give to just about any HTML tag, which is ID, and that allows JavaScript to interact with it. So I'm going to say ID equals, and I'll call it the title. All right, let me comment this out for just a moment here so I can demonstrate what this looks like. I'll hit save. I'll run my little local live server. It's going to bring up an HTML page, and it looks like that. I am the title. All right, so nothing special there, but I want to see if I can interact with that H1 and change it dynamically using JavaScript. So this is the JavaScript command to traverse the document and get to the right thing. We need to identify the thing we want to interact with, and we use the value there of whatever that ID attribute is. And then I'm going to change it to something. Because I'm always doing donut videos, I'll say, welcome to the Paradise Donut Company. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and hit save. And having hit save there, if I come over to here, it updated the title. So as I keep on refreshing the page, every single time it continues to say the same thing. The moment that this page displays as fast as a computer can run, it goes back and it overwrites that value right there. All right, just for giggles, watch what happens if I take this and I move it up here. All right, watch what happens. Okay, I saved it and I reload it. So there's an interesting outcome. Why is it that it's not updating this content anymore, but it did before? Well, one way I might figure out what's going on is by right-clicking and doing an inspect and going over to the console, and I see an error immediately. It says on line 11, it says uncaught type error, cannot set property in inner HTML of null. So what it's saying is, since this is null, it's saying this doesn't exist yet. How can that be? Well, when we're writing this page, we see everything as existing simultaneously on the page. But in terms of your web browser, it starts at the top and it goes from top to bottom, and the stuff that's underneath it doesn't exist yet. So when it gets to this part of the page, it tries to find the HTML tag that has this attribute associated with it, and it doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been rendered in the browser. So because it doesn't exist yet, it can't find it. And that's why if I put this tag, this script tag at the bottom, it can see it because the HTML has already been rendered and then it references it. So high-level idea here is that oftentimes script tags, their placement, especially when we put things like functions in them and things like that, it doesn't really matter whether we put them in the head or in a separate page as a script reference, whether we put it at the top of the body tag or at the bottom. But there are cases when it does matter, like when we're trying to reference some HTML that exists in the document. You shouldn't reference that HTML until it has been rendered and displayed. Then you can interact with it. Okay, so fun little aside as we deal with that. Let's go ahead and move that guy back to the bottom again so it's not broken anymore. So what we just did here was we changed the text of the inner HTML. And the inner HTML is this part of a tag. So you have a beginning part of a tag, an end part of a tag. Collectively, the whole thing is called an element. And this part right in here is called the inner HTML. So is there something we can do with this tag other than changing the inner HTML? Well, yes, we can also change the style there. So let us demonstrate that. So I'm going to copy that, paste, and this time instead of inner HTML, I want to talk to the style sheet aspect of it, or the style, and I'll do style.color, and I'm going to change it equal to a property, which is green. So I hit save, and I bring over my browser here, and it did just what I hoped it would do. Yay! Okay, so everything's going fantastic. All right, what else can we do? Well, another thing that you may have learned about in the course of studying JavaScript is that JavaScript can be run not just in order as soon as the page runs, but also in response to events. So some things won't happen, won't be triggered until something else in the page is interacted with. And one good thing to interact with is a button. So let's add a button to the page. And we'll say button type equals button. And we'll say update title. All right, so if I hit save, and I come over here, the other code's still running, but as a side note, this wouldn't have done anything anyway. There's no JavaScript associated with it. But what I can do is I can add an event handler here called onClick. You can see the IntelliSense figures out what I was trying to type, and onClick is something that I can add to just about any HTML element. So I'm going to say update title is a function that I'm going to call when you click on this, but update title is a function that doesn't exist yet. I still need to write it. So let me drop down here and I'll say function update title and kill that curly brace, wrap this up, hit save, everything gets nicely formatted. All right, so this seems to say as soon as I click on this, it's going to run this function, which is going to update some HTML on the page based on referencing its ID. All right, so let's give it a shot. So I bring this over and I click bing, update title. Yes, it works. Cool. Okay, no worries. Something that we oftentimes like to do as programmers is to toggle things. So right now this is just kind of one way. We can do it once and it never goes back again. But what if every single time we click this, it toggled back and forth? Doing this toggle functionality enables us to use a few different things that we've already learned in a JavaScript course. Things like if statements and variables. So let's go ahead and do something that allows us to toggle this. And I'm going to toggle it from green to red every time. All right, so first thing I need to do is think about how am I going to know if I've toggled from one color to another? Well, I need a variable to keep track of that. And then I'll just switch the variable every single time I toggle this. So I'll say Boolean toggled equals false. Oops, just straight up false. All right, so that's good to go. And I should have said let in front of there. Declare my variable properly, thank you. All right, and so I don't want to, when we call this function, I don't want to do this every single time. I only want to do it if Boolean toggled is, change that to a D, is false. So let's put an if statement here. I'll say if Boolean toggled is exactly equal to false, then get rid of that second parenthesis or second curly brace, wrap that up, hit save. All right, so it'll only do it if that's false. And once I run that, let me change that variable from false to true. So if I hit the button more than once, it's not going to keep turning it to green. However, if this has been turned to green and this is currently true, then let's have this execute a different piece of functionality. I'm going to copy all of this, put it here, and I'm going to say I want the color to be red. And let's update the text here. I'll say in green, not that that matters, but in red. And when this one runs, I want to flip the switch back to false. So true, false, true, false. Okay, so I hit save. And if I come back to here, reload, update title. Ooh, nice. So it goes back and forth. Everything's working correctly. If I wanted to get more insight to that, I could use the debugger, but don't need to do that right now. Let me just add on one little adjustment here as part of this first video on the DOM. Another thing that I would like to do is demonstrate, instead of the onClick event, I would like to show how onMouseOver is another thing that could be used to trigger our function down here. So if I come up here to this header and I add on onMouseOver, and I'll just go down there, and then I'll also do update title there. Okay, so now I don't need to give myself carpal tunnel by clicking that button all the time with that first finger. So here we go. Boing, 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 boing. And that is very pleasing. All right, I got other stuff for you related to the DOM in the next video, so follow along.